principal of the university, Sir Caritas Beatty, had expressed an interest to the city manager of commissioning and installing a statue of Rhodes on the terraces in front of the university building, and this gave the Rhodes National Memorial Committee a way to conclusively spend the funds remaining from the Rhodes Memorial Project and finally fulfill Coetzer's demands for a proper statue of Rhodes to be made. Marion Walgate's small heroic sculpture of Rhodes, seated similar to Rodin's The Thinker, was placed some 250 meters down the slope of the entrance portico of Jameson Hall. Blinking in the sunlight, facing east in its northwards imperial aspirations, noted in Kipling's poem on the base. I dream my dream by rock and heath and pine, of empire to the northward, I one land, from Lion's Head to Lie. With the widening of the M3 highway in 1962, this seated Rhodes climbed back up the hill and occupied a pride of place below Jamie Steps, surveying the rubby fields and the setting sun of the British Empire reflecting golden on the Hottentots Holland Mountains. As such, the seated Rhodes completed the set piece of the campus as a monument to British imperialism, supercharging the imperial axis emanating from the temple front, Jameson Hall, and cascading down the Jamie Steps in front of it. In classical Greek or Roman temples, the sculptured deity typically sits deep within the temple, a shadowy figure looking east through the front portico and out over the arrival of a procession of worshippers. The altar, which offerings and animal sacrifices are then made, sits outside the temple, ideally on axis with deity. Coetzer's demand for a deity for the Rhodes Memorial Temple suggests a more provocative interpretation of the seated Rhodes statue aligning with Jameson Hall. Here, the imperial axis thrust Rhodes as a misplaced deity into the open, overexposed and blinking into the bright African light, where he was largely unseen and ignored until Maqhele's assault brought attention to the violence that he stood for. As a deity, Rhodes latterly found that he had been placed on a sacrificial altar. Ignoring the imperial axis, the misplaced Mendy memorial and sidelined subaltern subjects. If the imperial axis staged a particular kind of protest violence, then other violent events 80 years earlier shaped an alternative speciality for the campus as memorial landscape, but this time decidedly off axis and further down the slopes of the campus. What is now soccer fields is where over 800 soldiers of the South African Native Labour Corps were billeted before their ill-fated ship left Cape Town for England in January 1917. The SS Mendy was sunk in a collision in heavy fog, forgotten route from Plymouth to Le Havre, with over 600 of their 800 soldiers of the 5th Battalion South African Native Labour Corps SANLC drowning in 2006. The Sunday Times Centenary Heritage Project commissioned the local artist Madi Pala to produce a memorial to the troops lost in the Mendi tragedy. Pala's installation consisted of a skeletal upturned hull and a prefacing set of tin hats. Pala and local blacksmith artist Luke Atkinson had the memorial set low so that people could walk through it and engage it more directly. An ad hoc committee led by UCT's registrar made an in situ assessment to locate the memorial of an embankment somewhat equidistant from the three adjacent student halls of residence, which made some sense given its general location of the former military camp. For nearly 10 years, the memorial remained significantly indistinct, obscure and unkempt, resembling a roadside accident memorial rather than a commemoration of over 600 dead soldiers. In preparation for the century of the First World War, the University of Cape Town engaged architect Trevor Thorold, regularly commissioned by UCT to deal with heritage issues and architecture on campus, to provide the site with a memorial wall with the names of the lost soldiers inscribed thereon, and to bring more special significance to the memorial. The resulting design cut a stone dressed wall into the existing bank with the names of the soldiers inscribed on granite on it, similar in intent but not in scale to Maya Lane's Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. The Mendi Memorial is off axis in more ways than one and can be read as an inversion of the imperial axis, embedded as it is into the bank edging a pavement. The speciality of the memorial is accidentally geometrically incoherent and random. Despite the reworking by Thorold in 2014, who tried to set up axial alignments with Devil's Peak, the memorial does not hold and make a place beyond its own cramped limits and does not easily support any ceremonial events. Ironically, the memorial enhances rather than counteracts the spatial equivalent of the forgotten memory of the Mendi and its lost soldiers who have only recently been honored and remembered as part of post-apartheid restitution process. Despite its official and institutional recognition and its not due Maya Lin's Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the memorial enacts a kind of ironically appropriate subaltern geography that Lin's abstract cut at the periphery of the Washington Mall overcomes by being embedded as an anti-monument within a defined monumental landscape. While the imperial axis arguably inscribed a mythical fundamentalist all-conquering line originating from Jerusalem via the Greek temple and embodied in the seated Rhodes. The soldiers of the Native Labour Corps who were not allowed to bear arms were appropriately themselves dug into the embankment as literally an in the trenches sideshow of axes. The memorial location unfortunately reinforced their statues as peripheral for the in and Hegelian conception of history that, in this context, translated the British Empire and Englishness as the logical and necessary pinnacle of the events of the world. These subaltern subjects have nevertheless lately come to find their voice through a number of representations as theatrical production and books, largely due to the decolonial rewriting of history so as to bring a counterbalance to the historically dominant narratives of colonialism and empire. However, the unhappy intransigence of the misplaced Mandy Memorial, acting as a sort of perverse counter memorial by default, suggests that the subjects of colonialism can never shake the burden of their marginalization in the march of the jingoistic narratives of history. Similarly, in architectural terms, it suggests that once an axis, or rather a particularly monumental axis, is inscribed in space and animates and dominates its context, it eventually pulls all architectural pieces towards it, or delegates them to an unknowable and peripheral universe. The Mendy Memorial is clearly off axis and lost in space.